All right. One second. Okay, I think we're good to go. Or at least we should be live at this point. If we're not, then we'll figure it out a little bit later. Okay, so let's get this going. For everyone that's registering and listening, or everyone who's registered on Zoom or viewing through YouTube, welcome to GVDS Showcase. This is the first showcase we're doing this week that's going to be highlighting the teams that went through virtual sprints all in November on different topics that interest them and on different challenges that were interesting. The format for this particular event or this session is going to be where we'll have everyone give introductions for the folks that are joining from the team side. And then they've already kind of planned out a presentation that you're seeing on the screen here in Mural. And we'll be going through that step by step to give you some background on their challenge, how they approached it, what the method was to kind of get to a solution and the path they chose. And then finally, we'll kind of we'll look at their prototype or their end results, and then take some Q&A at the end. So if while watching this, if you have any questions that pop up in the process, or if you're native to design sprints and want to put a how might we or a can we, you're more than welcome to, but start answering those questions early. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll do a little bit of Q&A with everyone in the group. So let's get started with this in that I'll go ahead and zoom in on the team. And then we'll go ahead and have people make introductions. So I know that the entire team, usually with these, the entire team won't be available, but the majority will be. So I know that Sabu's not going to be here, but let's start with going from left to right. Was Nora able to join us, or is she still working on it?
Still
I got it. I rebooted. I'm here. Hopefully we don't go down again.
So while we still have you, Nora, why don't you go ahead and give us an introduction about who you are, where you're from geographically, and a little bit about your professional background.
Hi, my name's Nora Scully. I live in Oakland, California. I'm founder of a small company called Scully Creative Spark, and I work with people doing custom design sprints and also using visual facilitation within those design sprints to help people solve problems and come to clarity in their ideas. My background is instructional design. I got my master's at San Francisco State University, go Gators. And I worked there actually for 8 years as first in accessibility, as an accessible technology training in the training initiative that's working with the 23 campuses to move accessibility into all of the practices. And I did a lot of user testing with students with disabilities and adaptive technology. And then I moved on to be a senior instructional designer in academic technology and worked on the online teaching and learning initiative that we were running. And I left that job in order to run my own business, doing design sprints and working in human-centered design to bring people to through ideation. And I'm also a sign language interpreter. I've had a long field in the of a disability rights and advocacy, and yeah, so that's me.
Cool.
Oh, I'm also an artist.
Yes, on top of all the other things,
and
which we're going to actually kind of sort of see later on, but yeah, cool. All right, thank you for that. Art, if you could, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Hi. Well, my name is Aart Verwij, and I was an agile coach for a long time. I really came from digital side, but when I discovered design sprints, I really fell in love, and now I run a small design sprinting agency where we really design digital products, but also food products. And that's a little odd, but it works really well. And I have a master's in food technology, so it really fits me. And I like it because the method is really good for it.
And where did you say you were geographically located again?
In the Netherlands, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Couldn't tell, but I just wanted to check real quick. Okay, so let's see. Who else we got? So let me make sure I'm capturing everyone we got. Believe, if I'm looking right. Susanna, I think you're next.
Hi, good to see everybody. I'm Susanna Childers. I'm in North Carolina, dialing in from the mountains of North Carolina this time, so hopefully my connectivity stays in. I'm a facilitator and trainer, and been using design thinking processes and sprint processes for the last about 20 something years with my company called AHA. We work around the world facilitating teams through learning processes and strategy and product development, marketing kinds of applications. So design sprinting is ideal. I've been doing it all in person, and so I joined GVDS to get more experience in working virtually, and jumped on this team to work with this amazing group of people to keep learning about the process. So really excited and glad to contribute. I have a lot of background in customer experience and user research kinds of things as well, so brought that along with my facilitation skills to this process to keep learning. So glad to be a part of Team Cuisine.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, Susanna. Jeff, if you could.
Cool. So I'm Jeff Lawrence. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa, and I have a background in advertising. I've been in advertising nearly 10 years now. Started off in the client service account management field and moved on over to strategy about 2 years ago. And yeah, I've been working in the premium automotive sector for the last year. Our company is looking to kind of accelerate the digital agenda, if you can say that. And yeah, so we've been toying with different ways of sprinting and getting to ideas and solutions a lot faster. So really amazed to have been part of a team like this. This first experience of mine has been amazing, and I'm pretty hooked.
Very cool. And Natasha, if you could.
Awesome. So I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and my background is I love problem solving, essentially. I did a career pivot after working the criminal justice system into computing science and interactive art and technology. And so design sprints are a key tool in the problem solving kit. And I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the big idea that the team started with. I'm going to lose the mural outline and go right here. So I know that the team kind of talked a little bit about the order in terms of who was going to speak when. So who wants to speak on the big idea that everyone came together on?
Yeah, let me take that, Robert. We really started. Well, I wanted to have something in the GVDS about food, and well, I think we had some interest there, and we formed a team. But the first complete team went missing in action, so we had a little bit of a setback there, and then we formed very quickly. We formed this new group. And we kind of broadened the challenge a bit. We wanted to have something about food, but also design thinking. In itself, it's really broad, but we brought this really fantastic group of individuals, people interested in art, people interested in mindfulness. So we did some lightning decision jam there, and we really came to a very, well, recognizable common problem for everybody. The time pressure in life, especially manifests around meal time, and then your meals suffer from you don't spend as much thought in eating as you should. And that was really like a very good problem area to discover more, and that's where we went all in.
Okay. And it looks like one of the top how many ways you had was how you make time for your food, correct?
Yeah.
So
Can you take this?
sure. So with that setup around, the time pressure in life means less time for nourishment, we started to ask questions. And the biggest question that came up was, how might we make more time for our food? And some of the other questions that were within that were, how might we tell the story of food? We realized that story was key to people's connection in their relationship to food. We also thought about nutrition and how, nutrition is really important, but it's not just about calories or fuel. And the other how might we asked was, how might we see time and mindfulness to not be in opposition? So, people have a lot of tasks in their life, and we didn't want this to be yet another thing to do to create more pressure. And so we imagined that in 2 years' time, if our solution was successful, people will think less of calories and think only of nutrition. And so that would be an ideal outcome that brought together that time pressure in life means less time for nourishment, and solved it by creating more time for nutritious and delicious food. The winning idea that came out was some solution sketches. If you could navigate over, Robert, to that solution sketch area on the top. Yeah, the winning idea. So there was a lot of excitement around models of mindful nourishment and the tongue lab ideas. So those were two solutions proposed by myself and Nora. And the tongue lab has the star because there was a particular part of the tongue lab that group members really liked. It was about having particular events around food that community could come and enjoy together, and ways to explore that. And the cards that are proposed in the models of mindful nourishment solution were seen as a way to facilitate people to get to the events, or maybe a tool at the events. And so with those solutions rising to the top, we decided to test with users. Nora, do you want to jump in on this section?
Well, did we want to share the prototype through the slides, or I'm not sure it's really clear here. This piece is really about looking on our journey from our subject matter experts around just those themes that we talked about, nourishment and mindfulness and calories and fuel. And we came up with a solution that would be mindful muddle cards. And would you like me to show the deck, or is this good enough, do you think? I'd like some. I missed the, because my internet went down. What did you decide we wanted to do?
I think it's up to the team. You could potentially just show your screen and show the slide deck if you'd like.
Okay, I can do that. Let me share the slide deck.
Oh, and also I'm noticing Jeff and Susanna are holding up the actual physical cards that they tested with. So that's a great way to share the prototype.
Yeah, that's a great way to show it too. I can't share, Robert, because you're sharing.
Oh, well then I'll stop sharing. There you go. It's all you.
Thank you.
So Art's just holding up the instruction side of the card, and Susanna's holding up one of the senses.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the prototype that we tested with users that Nora is just sharing on her screen.
So we asked them, questions about, does this, and do the instructions, make sense for them? What are their ideas? We didn't want to influence them too much with our ideas. We wanted to really see where they were coming from. So we brought them to a blank card and asked them, based on the instructions they saw, what kinds of things would they put in that card, or where would they see it be used? And a lot of them talked about being able to use it individually and with a group. I'm going to move to the next slide. And once they saw the cards, we also continued to prompt them to tell us how they would use them, what they thought. And some people really liked the images. Other people felt the images, they wanted more of cartoon style of the mindful muddle. There was definitely, 2 out of the 4 people didn't understand muddle. Our monk that we had, that was our subject matter expert at the beginning, who then was also looked at our solution. The idea of mindfulness and a muddle is a duality, and there's a duality in different types of meditation practices. So it's points to the direction of needing to really define more of what we're doing. There was people understood that the mindful muddle person was a reflection in a reflecting pool. One of the desires and one of the feedback was that we make that a bowl that they're sitting in. Brings it back to food. Responded strongly to slow and notice. They had a lot to say and they connected very well to slow and notice. Locate hunger. Some people addressed their bodies, but other people then addressed, thinking about locating hunger out in the world. So we did find that these cards did elicit a response from people. Sense and courage was a little bit harder for people to really see how it fit, and they really muddled through. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry.
Well,
okay. Where am I?
That was me, by the way. I was just calling you.
There. And after we went through this and got their feedback, people saw that they could use this in a group. They could use this at a gathering with friends to start conversation, at an event, to start activities and things like that, or individually. There was a question about whether they would use it digitally or in person. And people found that, when they were out, they might not have those cards with them. And so the digital reminder of the prompts might help them stay mindful. Then we connected it to the tongue lab. And I think I'm just going to let people look at this for a second.
Is this kind of like a taster lab in a way? Was what the original idea was for this?
Well, the tongue lab is a container for the creative prompts. So this idea that you would have these creative prompts, which might be daily prompts that empower people's ideas to take micro actions in the world, which is connected to some of the goals we had in our sprint. But it also then allows those prompts to community actions, creative intentional actions that can make change through social engagement in the world, and that they would come to events. So they would meet other people who are doing creative projects, feeding people in the world, community gardens, making art actions that actually change our lives in the way we think about food.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm going to, I think that's it for that.
Okay, so that essentially was the deck that you had went through with testers to kind of show them the concept and get the reactions to the different cards, as well as the tongue lab, where all of that was going on in a community sense, correct?
Yes, yes. And the drawing that you see now up on the screen, the third top panel is a way, a kind of with the goal to summarize some of the issues that we're looking at. Like, we really need to define who is the audience. That came up a great deal in the interviews, and to narrow our target. That it's not, the tongue lab might not be for everybody, you know, that there is a specific user, and this idea that people definitely who have a love of passion of food and want to see how food impacts our lives and sustainability connected with social action and feeding people. And so those are just some things underneath the horizon that were popping up, that, you know, we would be looking at people who are designers, who are artists and entrepreneurs. And on to the right of the goal is, you know, food action would be this overt piece of the project, but underneath it, really these prompts. We're really kind of curious about the prompts and testing the prompts further with an audience, the cards becoming, you know, possible memes or on social media, where people might be able to also then be sharing back what cards they might be making. So a bit open source, seeing how it could it become, is it a game? How do we form community, and how does that then translate into identity about food and taking action in the world? I put on the bottom unpacking assumptions about low income and food, because there was one person who we tested who believed that, or mentioned that, you know, well, low income people don't really know about healthy choices, and so we would be kind of educating them. And I would say we could challenge that idea.
And who was the person who was the person who drew this?
Oh, I drew this. I'm sorry. With help, on the lower left-hand side, Natasha last night went through and really pulled out some of the themes in the user testing that she felt were poignant and bright.
Right here.
So the complex, that there is a duality of complexity and simplicity that we were going for, and that people responded to. And that we really saw that the cards touched this intimacy and vulnerability that food and what that is in our lives really means in relationship to nourishment. There was also a playful aspect and a lot of curiosity, and that joy and health were also considered in terms of opening our consciousness and creating community. And people they're like, muddle? Why muddle? They were muddling through the muddle. And if we were to, you know, bring that forward into next steps, we would be thinking about what small experiments and tweaks we might make. You know, where is that most impactful place that we could try again and test again? Maybe we need to do some more researching, testing, or even another sprint. You know, the user map in the bottom of the picture is just a nod to the idea that we would be looking at that more closely. And the far left hand right corner is more about, you know, we have to think about what our goal would be and reality. If any of us were to move on with this project, what would that really look like in terms of a passion project in addition to our day jobs, you could say? And then we'd have to come up with a sprint story and our next steps and figure out what needs more work and look at how confident we feel about that.
So if I'm looking at the mural board now, it looks like, and I'm assuming that this came from the group, is that the prototype you did, the presentation, as well as like the images, it met the sprint questions that you originally set out to kind of set. For the prototype, in terms of addressing the long-term goal, maybe you're not quite as confident as you were with the sprint questions. But in terms of do you think you addressed the challenge you took on as a team, there was a no. Do you want to speak to this particular point? Because this is kind of where the circle kind of well, the phrase being square the circle, and kind of bringing everything together.
Actually, I'll just jump in really quick. I didn't actually update that content there, so
Okay.
you're not
Okay. So
reflecting.
I'm actually speaking that boilerplate. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. So I mean,
All right, let's just move that aside and kind of go into like this part here that Nora has kind of touched upon. So you got a lot of feedback on what you had done, and it looks like it covers a wide spectrum of different things, whether it's insight, positive aspects, informational, as well as statements that were negative or challenging. Are there any particular comments that for anyone on the team that stood out to you, or things that you want to highlight?
I can talk to that a little bit, and Natasha jump in as well. I think that, as we showed people the cards, and I did one interview in person, and several of us did these. I think we got a range of, this is really interesting and intriguing, to things like, well, cards, might they just get lost in a drawer, and I would rather have this by on an app or something to send me a reminder. There was some confusion over the phrase of tongue lab and what that might be, as Nora referred to a little bit. A little bit of, kind of different responses in terms of the logo. I think we all thought she was adorable. And then, my in-person interview said she looks like a baby, but I know, the woman that Nora interviewed kind of could see that and could see the reflection, and got this furthered the ideas into making that reflection into a bowl in the reflection. So I think we got a lot of great insights around that. On the back, I think we got some great feedback in terms of things like, sense and courage, and that was maybe confusing, and locate hunger, like Nora had said, elicited things like, that's, fascinating, and I'm not sure if this is a hunger project or something that's around, in my body and for myself. There was a little bit of disconnect between the, the logo hand drawn and then the pictures. So, prototyping, we got feedback on that, but I think we had a great time getting a chance to find some of these, to actually see it and get really quick feedback. Actually, Art, if you want to show, Art made a little video of making the prototypes, and Art does a lot of that in his work all the time. So I think we had a really fun time turning this idea and concept into physical form. And I know Jeff did them with down in South Africa. So super cool opportunity to see these come to life all around the world. Art, do you want to share that video?
Yeah, it's in the middle of the mural here. So if you double click it, I think everybody can show it. I don't think it will stream well if you put it like that. But
sometimes it's showing a video within a video within Zoom.
Yeah.
We'll see you can see how it goes. But people could take time to just. I guess do people have access to this mural, Robert?
Yeah, they will later on. I'm also going to put
it
later.
I see.
That people can basically view it from like local, because it is true. If you try to stream video over this now, it's going to be kind of how like challenging Wi-Fi is. It's going to be blocky. You'll hear the sound okay, but you'll just basically get kind of like show images. You could do it if you really want to. It's totally up to you guys. But I did put in the chat, if people want to see it there, they can. It'll also be part of the show notes when we eventually like have this out on demand. So they'll be able to see it there too.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that, in addition to learning the content, we learned a lot about how we put together the structure of bringing together a tight interview design. I think we got a ton of information. We could probably spend weeks more digging into just the 5 interviews that we did and learning about how people around the world think about food and look at food and come from different backgrounds. So I know that Nora pointed out, really helping to refine who this is for came up in a few interviews. So there were some, really interesting acts. I think one of the things that you can see right on your screen, that quote that I think came from Lonnie in Nora's interview, that eating is a private act that takes place in a public place. It's a very public thing. And so how do you bring back that mindful personal internal in an external kind of world, so that duality concept is all there as well. So we learned a lot, both on the process, on the content, on making cards, on working together, and on getting a lot of deep insight. So there's a ton in the interviews in terms of content that we can continue to mine. I think that's one of the great things about this process. You can go really fast, but you can go pretty deep as well.
Yeah. So I'm moving over to the right here, and let me get to the screen here. So looks like, whoa, mural all of a sudden just suddenly it's like, so highlights, these are individual highlights for each of you, I believe. So Susanna, you were just talking. It looks like yours was layers of learning for participating on a second team, iteration and working with a new team, allow me to gain more skill and contribute my creative thinking and user research experience. Do you want to expand upon it at all, or does that pretty much summarize what you got from this particular?
I think that gets to most of it. I think this was the second sprint. So I was also on Team Marvel. So I think the opportunity with GVDS about kind of rapid iteration and learning applied to this learning the process. So those of us who participated in this global virtual design sprint had the chance to be in different roles, to learn in different ways. So in addition to content, learning process and participating, trying things, learning with a group of really dedicated other people who are all out there wanting to learn. So everybody was really generous with their time and energy, and open that. And Robert, you created a great container to support all of that. The amount of support that we got in order to do that learning, so was just tremendous. We know that one of the things about how people learn is through iteration. So for me, getting to be on this team with a whole new group of people, partial overlap, but a lot of new people, really helped to cement a lot of the things that I've learned about the process, and the virtual can work. So
I see Sabu was writing something right on the mural as you were talking, Susanna. I don't think he's on the call, but
that was me.
I think so.
I was basically impersonating Sabu. Sorry.
He's on a plane.
Yes, because I saw it said this is a text box, so this also here. So I don't think it was drafted, so I could go like, "Hi, I'm Marguerite." So yes, I'm filling in for those folks. I'm just basically putting in what wasn't there. So if there were anyone else on the team would like to comment on any highlights related to the design sprint itself, or the challenge that you had, anything in particular that you'd like to reflect on?
For me, it's really amazing that you bring together a group of individuals that have never even talked together, and we start with a common challenge, and everybody gives in everything they have, and they make their best, and you grow into a team, even though we're separated like all out of the over the world. For me, that was a big learning, like how you start with a group of individuals and you end up as a team. I did not expect that to happen, to be honest. So that was a really, really pleasant surprise. Yeah.
And it repeats itself every single sprint that we have, especially given the diverse set of people that come to the call. I've seen it happen so many times where it's like, I even have apprehension on my own about like, okay, did I actually assemble the right team? Is anybody gonna go like crazy and like sort of throw things off? But no, more often than not, the team normalizes and comes around the challenge pretty well. So yeah.
We didn't have any temper tantrums, Robert. No temper tantrums.
No
No.
throwing.
No crying. We did laugh.
definitely laughed. No time to have temper tantrums. It was just get the work done. It was a sprint, right? Gotta
True,
look around and run fast.
You didn't have time to form tribes like in Survivor and figure out who's going to be voted off the island.
We are a tribe. Team Cuisine. We're one team.
That's right. Okay, so we'll take some time for Q&A real fast. And before I do that, I spoke to the boilerplate, but maybe it's a good question to ask is, how do you all feel about the challenge you took on? How close did you get to answering the sprint questions and addressing the long-term goal that you had set out? And then do you think you kind of took this challenge head on, and you think you've addressed it properly? And I know that one person reflected on where it could go, but let's play in the space for about 5 minutes and find out from y'all where you think you landed after kind of going through this process and addressing the challenge the way you did. So the first question would be, it's like, do you feel that you hit or are aligned with the long-term goal that you had set out with, and the sprint questions? And I'll ask Natasha if I call that a name.
Yeah, I'll jump in on the how might we make more time for our food, which was our top how might we. I think that, even though the boilerplate answer is yes, I would agree with that. I think that we did answer that, and that we were able to show how users might carve out an extra 30 seconds of a micro action in looking at a card and considering, slowing to notice or locating their hunger. I think that we did very well on that one. In terms of the long-term goal, people thinking less of calories and only of nutrition, there was a lot of complex data that came back from users around that. Nutrition is a very complicated topic, and has a lot of various influences and that kind of thing. So that's a bigger question. I don't know, maybe 2 years, but I'd say that one's still outstanding in my mind.
Do you think users had any issues with the depth and breadth of the knowledge that they were taking on versus what they were seeing on the cards? Like I saw from the user testing, there was an interpretation of not only the language you used, but the imagery in comparison to, like, say, the logo that you had on the top of the card. So to rephrase my question is, do you think that this particular challenge was, and the target you chose with the cards and kind of going to that solution, do you think with this long-term goal that did the user, was it able to digest the complexity of the topic around nutrition and mindfulness, and did that translate in the cards that the solution that you had presented them?
I think it would if there was mindfulness that became a daily practice, but that would presuppose that they're using the cards, and most of the users said that they could see themselves using them. So in that case, I guess I will go with a yes. But I think that, one of the things we explored in the creation of the cards was that, how much content should we put? How much direction should we put? How much should we ask the users to do on this little card? And instead of giving tons of direction, we actually decided to go the other way and simplify it down, and to start really simple. So I suppose in the long term, it is more healthful to be mindful, and would lead to better nutritional choices.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for the complex question. I was trying to get it out of my head and trying to make a very simple way of asking, did you hit the long-term goal? And it ended up being a little bit more complex. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it's a complex topic.
Yes.
I think we've bit off a big food is delicious and complex, lots of layers.
And the experience of it is always subjective, especially with understanding about nutrition or understanding about mindfulness or even understanding about what proper nutrition is. Everyone's going to be coming from, you're dealing with cultural backgrounds, you're dealing with how people are raised and what kind of foods they eat. So
Yeah.
it is kind of getting out of that element and addressing what you're presenting as a solution and viewing it through that lens. So
Yeah.
I would add to that I think we're on the path. And so from the nature of doing it as a design sprint, we were able to pick a piece of this big challenge that we as a team focused in on. And through some really great subject matter expert interviews, we got that upfront learning to help kind of steer us where we were going once we got onto the broader topic. And we learned a ton so that the iterations will keep coming. So I think that, in this really short sprint time, we were able to get feedback on a prototype that addressed part of it. And then I know that Nora already has tons of ideas on the bottom of hers about where this might go from here. So to that end, I would agree with Natasha. I think we, did achieve the goals, and it's not done. So you're not ever done with something in a 5-day sprint, but you're on a path where you've learned a ton and you've got some viable things that you really could mock up and go test on a broader scale in market test kind of things.
And then the moving forward and the execution of it is a different conversation beyond
Right.
what you here. It's just it's a different framework. It's a different discussion. Okay.
But it was like, Alice in the rabbit hole, food, and we all allowed ourselves to fall into it. And it was really great the way it was framed. We did that lightning decision jam first to bring us in, and then we're able to, really trust the process and let us take it somewhere. I definitely have questions about how we got from what we had in the lightning demos to our sketches and then to this final prototype. I mean, it was really so quick, and our team stayed in that spirit of moving through it quickly, rapidly prototyping, and coming up with a concept. So I think that was, we really stayed in the spirit of the sprint.
Cool. I was noticing that at the time that Jerome looks like he's put in some couple of questions. I was about to just say like, oh no, the mural's been infiltrated, but it really hasn't. So we'll get into that for the last 15 minutes. Jerome did ask a question early on where he asks the group, what has been the biggest aha moment within the team in relation to the challenge pursued? And how have you incorporated that into the solution? Anyone?
I mean, we haven't talked about this as a team, but I wonder what people think about the cards, actually, like the playfulness that came out of the user testing. For me, that was an aha moment and was surprising. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's that's definitely one aspect, but also what you mentioned before, the kind of the epiphany that first we were on the track to make the cards really complex with a lot of text and explanations on them, and then we really went complete other way, like make them as simple as possible, where there's more space for you to to fill it in and to kind of do what you want with it. For me, that's kind of a real insight that we gained, designing these cards.
Yeah, Art, that moment when, there's the decision that we're going to go with those 2 pieces of the sketches. And then for us as this design team to have the short window of time it felt like a real leap. I almost felt like we could do another lightning decision jam about what we were really going to do, because there's so many possibilities around the food texture and your senses, and we didn't have much time. And so Natasha and I kind of just took the extra time to meet and made some executive decisions about simplifying. And I don't, how I had started with that logo, and through talking to her, I was drawing, and then it just kind of came. So it was definitely an organic process. That as designers, we had to trust that, okay, we're gonna go out on a limb here and make something.
So he follows up with, did the team fail anywhere, and how is that mitigated?
When I was revisiting all of our murals for each day, I looked at how many ideas we actually started with, and our votes on the different how might we's were actually all very close. And so there was a lot of things that got left behind in the spirit of honoring the sprint process. So don't know if I would say it's a failure because of the fact that it allowed us to focus, but there's definitely a lot that was important and was voted to be important that we didn't pursue. So I think in service of the sprint, we focused, but that also meant we had to lose some really interesting and important pieces of, food and product and design thinking, which was our overarching challenge.
But you felt like the target that you had chosen within the solution sketches was going to hit upon what you wanted to kind of like showcase.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And yeah, so in doing that, I think, it's both a failure and a success. It's a letting go. It's a necessary letting go. And I think speaks to that part about complexity. There's so much to this, and that it's difficult to cover all the pieces that are within that complexity.
Got it. Jeff, you've been kind of quiet over there in the corner. What are your thoughts around like where the team failed, how they mitigated it? Any other thoughts you have about the sprint?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more to add. This sprint process for me was equal parts terrifying, intimidating, and a massive learning curve. So coming from a background where I'm not involved in product design and user interface and user experience and user design and that kind of thing, for me it was a beautiful thing to watch, because as I said earlier, it's such a steep learning curve, learning from people who, this is their kind of bread and butter. And this is the way that people think that are in product design or user testing or user interface. So I guess I sort of took a bit of a back seat in many ways. And I guess personal failure of mine is probably not participating as actively as I maybe would have liked to. But that comes with, for me, it kind of comes with the territory and it comes with the learning, right? So my GVDS 2.0 will be probably a lot more interactive on my part. And maybe a bit more vocal.
Now, did you participate in the Lightning Decision Jam we did previous to this sprint? You were part of that group, correct?
No, I didn't participate in this Lightning Decision Jam. I participated in another one.
Okay.
The day our LDJ was on, my fiber provider decided that I shouldn't have fiber, so couldn't join that one. So I guess I kind of felt like I was coming into the whole sprint process on the back foot, which is never a great feeling. But I don't know. This has just been incredible for me.
Because I asked the question because Kristen Kazamaki asked it, and that's that Art and I basically arranged a last minute Lightning Decision Jam with people that were going to be part of the sprint to kind of jumpstart the idea of what the challenge meant to everyone. Whereas before we kind of gave plenty of time in October for people to think about the challenge, maybe do a little bit of research. This was something where the folks that were originally aligned for this particular challenge, like way in advance, they were starting to drop off because of other obligations. So to Kristen's question, I can kind of answer it, but Art, you can chime in. I think we did bring in everyone that was on the team the following week for this challenge based on the LDJ that we did the previous week. I mean, does that sound right for everyone else?
Yeah, everybody was there, and we kind of jump-started it with the LDJ, and it made sense, right? We are all on track and we are good to go. So
yeah, and we didn't do as like intense problem framing, but I don't think it mattered too much. And that we were still, it was better to be aligned on what we were actually going to be concentrating on than getting into the nuances of audience and everything else. It's a nice to add, but it wasn't absolutely necessary, probably.
I think.
Robert, go ahead, Susanna.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that, one of the key things for me is when you think about, and it had been my experience in doing these types of processes in person, is that the work starts before the week of the sprint. And so that LDJ and the subject matter expert interviews and a lot of work happens before the 5 days of creating, of narrowing, ideating, sketching, and testing. So, you know, I don't know, is it a myth that it's a 5-day process? I think it depends on where your team is. And when your team's formed with these people, like we're literally from all over the world, you know, it started before it started. So I think Jeff's feeling of coming in on a back foot, you know, he jumped in admirably with the rest of us, and we all had different technical challenges and everything that, you know, that's kind of that key team forming and getting the team to come together without making assumptions that the team is together, you know, is critical for facilitating whether you're in person or whether you're on a virtual team. You need the time for both content and for the people to get to know each other. So I would say right now, this team of the 7 of us could go on and do something else really well because we've started to get to know each other. And we could be even clearer in our communication. You're still kind of, if you're not in the team, you're hesitant to speak up and you don't know where everyone else is coming from. So all of those interpersonal things we need to be really aware of in a virtual process as well. For me, that was a remembering, relearning kind of thing, or learning for the first time in the virtual frame as critical. Nora, you were going to add something too?
I think just, you know, adding to what you said about timing, you know, really understanding even more deeply with this, that timing ahead of time, like in the other team we were in Team Marvel, we did our lightning decision jam ahead of time. We were able to form a little bit and really start looking for our subject matter experts. We had our research team who was on board, and they were starting to move through setting those questions for us. We had time to listen to those interviews, and then the next week start our sprint. And so depending on who you're working with, you know, a real company, you know, who's looking at a real problem, that framing before you get to the table of being able to have those persona stories and those long-term goals and the pieces, the sprint, the SMEs set up for interviews would make a difference. I mean, we definitely did a really quick turnaround that first weekend of getting subject matter experts in, recorded, and people listened to them. So on Monday, we were able to go. So really kudos to our team for stepping up and playing the game. We had a really fun game this week.
And since this is probably
also, you moved to user testing, and that also is where the trail into other times. We didn't all have the time to listen, I think, and I don't like our core didn't come together around really looking at the user testing and where we might go. So that's that other piece.
So this is probably going to be the final time that all of you are going to get together on one stage and that on the same call. And one of the things I do for the GVDS is the Spotlight Awards, which I ask everyone that's participated in this event to kind of give some kudos or to recognize people for their abilities. But I think in the final minutes, what I'd like to do is kind of do a live version of that. So if anyone would like to say a few words about somebody that they worked with on their team, in terms of like something they did that was amazing, something about their abilities, let's take some time to kind of like do that and recognize each other for either your contributions or just what you brought to the table. I think that would be a nice way of kind of closing the session as we go into it. So I'll just start with Art, and then people can kind of chime in from there. So Art, is there anyone in particular that on the team that really struck you as someone that went the extra mile, or that really impressed you, or that you were just happy to work with?
I think I would really call out Natasha, really put spotlight on Natasha, because she brought the whole mindful thinking really up, and she also took a really, I think, a big part in, let's say, designing the cards, and not how they looked, but really the mindful part of it, which is like a really big part of the solution. So I think this was essential for the success. That would be my 2 cents.
Cool. Natasha, who would you like to kind of call out in terms of someone that or some people that on your team that really went the extra mile or that's really made an impression on you?
Sure. I can't help but to call out Nora. We had a really magical moment where I was able to work with her in envisioning, like while we were working on the logo, for example, I was talking and she was drawing and I didn't know she was drawing, and she just posted what she drew. And it was like, oh yeah, that was exactly what was, that was exactly what seems to work. And so her drawings were ways to anchor the team throughout the process, and they're very thoughtful and super appreciated. So thank you to Nora for that. It was really a great experience. I'd love for her to be highlighted for that.
Cool. Nora, how about yourself? Who would you like to kind of highlight on your team in terms of somebody that made an impression with you?
Oh, everyone made an impression on me.
It's always difficult because you feel like you call one name and it's like, yeah, everybody else, they dial it in, but that person right there, no, I'm kidding. It's not,
Well, I think just to I could shout back at Art and Natasha, definitely working on that design team together, moving through the poetry of mindfulness was a beautiful experience. But I also want to point out, like, Susanna, in many ways kept us on track, and is able to really see what needs to be done and how to frame things in the challenge. That, I think that brought a lot to the team as well.
cool.
Thanks, Nora.
Susanna, who would you like to remark on or anything?
Well, I think this, I'm like, I got sad when you said it was the last time we're going to be together. We'll have to find a little Team Cuisine reunion or something, but because I think I've got some really great new connections. Jeff and I are going to meet up the next time I'm in South Africa, and Art's invited us to come over to the Netherlands to see him too. So you never know where we might, and I think we've been invited to Vancouver as well. So we'll get ourselves reconnected. I would also add, he's not on the call, but Daniel did a lot of the behind the scenes weaving, and I think he may felt like he didn't participate as much on this team, but he kind of kept up our murals a little bit. He set up our base camp, which we didn't talk about trying to use base camp as an additional layer on this team. So we were all learning that as well. I don't know that any of us had used that very much. So shout out to him for adding that extra, those extra pieces and kind of keeping our technical behind the scenes, because that was one huge learning about doing this is you've got to get the people side, but you got to make sure the technical stuff is working as well, and you're keeping that up. So
yeah, I was gonna say about the base camp. Last night when I was making all the content, I was going back to Daniel's original posts about the mural links, because I was like, where's all the mural links? And because of Daniel's work, I was able to find them. And I just want to do a quick shout out to Jeff as well. You had said you didn't participate as much, but I actually totally disagree. Like, I felt that you were 100% there, and I normally do the user testing, user research, because that's where I'm, that's what I do. But I remember the day when we were talking about how that's going to go, and you were like, yeah, I'll take that on. And I was like, oh shoot, like I don't know how to design. I was like, And so it was actually by you and others stepping into that, it actually created an amazing space for me to explore, and I really enjoyed that. So thank you for stepping in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
yeah, we had a great little user research site. I think, Robert, we stayed on your Zoom channel till you kicked us off because that one night, it was like a Friday night and it was really late in South Africa and Europe, and we were still talking user research plan, and we came up with this like super awesome thick deck of all the things we were going to talk about. There's a wealth of information about mindfulness and nutrition and eating in those interviews. So it was a great all-around team effort, really great team forming within a short time.
And for Sabu and Marguerite, who aren't here, is there anything we'd like to say about them?
Sabu was able to, kind of weave himself in and out in different ways in base camp. So every once in a while I would see a message from him, good job, Nora, or, great user testing. And so he may have been busy, but I also knew that he was there in support and definitely at the beginning. And Marguerite as well is not as outspoken as some of us are. But she really, when she's on a team, she really makes the contributions that are important and adds to the team greatly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to give a shout out to this team. There was a particular moment on that Friday night, and I'd spent sort of 3.5 hours in the car, wired on Red Bull, and there was a moment where Susanna was sitting in her space, and all of a sudden was just live prototyping cards. And for me, that was my aha moment. I was like, oh man, this is gonna get made. Like, this is really cool. And like, I just remember getting really excited. I had like a little paper CNC cutter ready set up over there. I was like, I'm gonna take this on. I'm gonna make these cards. It's gonna be amazing. And I just like, maybe it was the Red Bull, but I got super excited about that. That was the point for me when I was like, this is cool. This is good.
I think it may have influenced, but I think overall it was intrinsically motivated, not externally chemically motivated through the carbonation. Although it's been a while since I've ever Red Bull myself, so we'll leave it at that. All right, so fantastic. So this was Team Cuisine showcase for mindful munching. I think I termed it. Y'all did an amazing amount of work. I think it was really super interesting to see how artistry kind of came through on this and how it was represented through physical cards. I think you're the only team that created a physical prototype, if I'm not mistaken, that where you're, instead of something digital, it was something people could tangibly use. And I apologize for saying this is the last time you meet. Obviously, y'all have plans to go in different places and eventually meet up with one another. So yes, it's not saying goodbye, it's just saying, see you later for now. I will say that I'll be putting all this up online so people can rewatch the presentation we had. If you do have any feedback from me about the event, about the way the process was, any improvements, I'll be sending out a link to basically get your feedback on that. And again, I mentioned the Spotlight Award. So outside of us having a brief kind of observation about what everyone brought to the table, that's where it can be codified, and then I'll be using that towards the end of December to really highlight what people had did and kind of did for the team. And finally, and I forgot what finally was. I was like, okay, I got these 3 points. I got one more. Trying to remember it. Can't remember it. Okay, fine. Yeah, I can't remember it. I'm just happy that everything came together for the team. Thank you so much for being part of the Global Virtual Design Sprint. Really appreciate all of you kind of participating in this. And yeah, I think it was a great time. So thank you all for coming in for the showcase and showcasing your work. Right? Okay. Everyone do a group wave. You want to do a last group photo before we go? We'll do it that way. I'll stop sharing and then we'll do one last one. This one doesn't have to have any particular rhyme or reason. I'll put the gallery up. And let's see here. I've got too many things. There you go. Okay, so yes, the mindful cards and the edible, something that's food related. How about that? And do I have anything food related? I have cups. Hang on.
I think this is the same magazine of the one that inspired that conversation that day. I can't remember.
Yeah. These are the, so my son over here, if you want to see, we've been working on a marble race. So these are little drinkable cups that we've been putting all the marbles in, but for the sake of cuisine, that'll work. All right. To Team Cuisine, fantastic run. 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. Thank you all very much. And, enjoy the rest of your week. And I'm sure we're going to talk again soon.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everybody.
Guys. guys.
All right, bye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye,
watching,
everybody.
everyone who's on the
Bye.
call and
Bye.
YouTube and on Zoom. Thanks for watching,
Bye.
and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
All right, bye.